Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Aedifico Insights podcast. I am so excited and honored today to have Brett Earnest as our guest. Brett is the Executive Vice President of the Centers of Excellence at Suffolk Construction. So we're going to hear from him today about all things happening over on the East Coast and what he's working on. And so really excited about it. Let's dive right in. Brett, tell us about the Centers of Excellence at Suffolk.
Well, Mandy, first, thank you so much for having me and congratulations. I've known you in prior endeavors. I think that you were one of the first folks that I met when I moved to Seattle and was amazingly welcoming. So couldn't be happier to be here with you. Thank you for having me. So Centers of Excellence, it needs a little bit of explanation, not hopefully a whole lot, but it's really ensuring that we are providing consistency from a national perspective in very specific market sectors. So those market sectors are mission critical data centers, aviation, gaming and hospitality, federal government, public-private partnerships, and advanced technology semiconductor manufacturing.
So many big things happening in every single one of those. So what is one of the consistencies that you oversee amongst those? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the best thing is I'm surrounded by amazing folks. So Charles McCarthy leads the Mission Critical group. He's been in the industry for over 25 years. Sam Slyman leads the aviation transportation group. He was at Massport before coming to Suffolk and has over 3 decades of experience. Pete Tufo in gaming, Darren Hart in semiconductors, Phil Brault in federal, Trish Philippone in P3. So I get to work with those amazing leaders that have great experience and really focus on strategy, consistency, everything from how we staff and how we look in the future, as well as day-to-day operations and ensuring that we are providing certainty and consistency across the board in those different market segments.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should come back to, staffing for the future. That's definitely,
Well, that's
up
where
my
you and I met, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But first, tell us about why you decided to pursue a construction career.
Yeah, no, it's a good question and one that quite honestly I didn't know that I was going to get myself into. When I graduated college, I wanted to do something tangible. I didn't want to be behind a desk, and I had an opportunity. A friend was working with a construction company in Washington D.C. and said, "Hey, this is much more about sticks and bricks. It's about strategy. It's about finance. It's more than anything about relationships."
Yeah.
I said, outside of working for Habitat for Humanity and maybe building a birdhouse in my backyard, I don't really have any construction experience. And he said, look, it's take a little bit of a leap of faith, but I think that what you bring to this is, an open person that brings people together, and that's the name of the game. And you need to be able to work with people across the spectrum, from folks that are, pushing brooms and keeping the job site safe and clean, to the folks that are cutting checks for mega million, billion-dollar opportunities.
Yeah.
And it was something that fascinated me. So that's how I got my career kicked off back in 2003, which still doesn't seem like that long ago, but
I know.
now I'm dating myself.
Oh my gosh, I know. The early 2000s, and everybody talks about how long ago that was. It's decades, and I guess it's
Yes.
true, but I was grown in the
Yeah.
early
We,
2000s,
we,
right?
we've got our entry position is called a career start. It's usually project engineers.
Okay,
And
yeah.
those folks, for the most part, weren't even born when I came into the industry, which is making me feel, I'm not going to say the word old, I'm going to say
Right.
experienced.
Right, wise.
Yes,
That's what it is.
exactly.
Totally. Yeah. So I mean, but you've had an interesting career path, compared to a lot of people who are in construction. What do you think has been one of the most kind of pivotal moments in your career?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that I think back to often. And when I'm speaking to our career starts and folks that are, entering their leadership journey within our company and even in the industry, is to say yes when you can. Yes to a new opportunity. Yes to moving to a new geography. If you're in project management, yes to taking a stint out in the field. The most pivotal was, I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I started my career in DC, so driving distance from home. I grew up in a very, humble middle class family in central Pennsylvania. So DC was eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
So I think, I guess back to your original question, just taking the leap of faith, getting into the industry. But
hmm
really in 2005, I had an opportunity to go to Los Angeles. I had never crossed the Mississippi. I knew nothing about the West Coast. had no friends on the West Coast, knew nothing about the industry. But I said yes. I said, you know what, I'll take the opportunity, and if it doesn't work out, I can always come back to the Mid-Atlantic area, and that'll be a home for me, both
Yeah.
personally and professionally. And then that continued from Los Angeles to San Francisco to Seattle, where I met you, and now Seattle to Boston, where my family and I moved a little over a year ago.
How are the West Coast and East Coast different from your perspective?
Yeah, there are a lot more similarities than there are differences. I
Mm,
do think that, people talk about work-life balance and, the demeanor of people on the East Coast versus the West Coast, but I think in our industry, it all comes back down to people and relationships.
that's right.
Whether you're pursuing work, whether you're trying to acquire or retain talent, how you deal with challenging circumstances, being factual, being honest, and building relationships is the name of the game. And it doesn't really matter where you are in the United States or the world for that matter. That's
That's
what
right.
it comes down to. That's the table stakes, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the industry is small, right? So, like, I mean, you're on the East Coast now, but we met on the West Coast. And it's kind of fun when you go to events that are national and you see these names or you look at someone's resume. And because the industry is kind of small in that way, it's like, okay, like I totally understand exactly where this person's been and what they've done, based on the companies they work for. That's kind of how I've always read resumes, but it is a small world. And I don't know, I guess sometimes I think on the East Coast people tend to be a little more direct. You know what you're getting. On the West Coast we are good at adding nuance, let's put it that way.
That's very politically correct of you. Yes, but the interesting thing I think, and I've been lucky and I had the opportunity to say yes, but spans. So, I mean, I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago. So, having worked on the East Coast, worked on the West Coast, the relationships, the network, as you mentioned, it's a super small industry.
Yeah.
Whether it's pursuing an aviation opportunity in California or it's chasing a healthcare project on the East Coast of Florida, the
Mm,
triangulation of relationships, the designer that is on this healthcare project on the East Coast of Florida ties back to it was Perkins and Will, and
okay.
it's a phone call away for somebody that I spent 10 years with, and it's amazing how you always talk about 6 degrees of separation. It's really in our industry
Yeah.
one. It's if it's not
Right.
direct, it's one phone call away, and I think that goes back to the concept of building the relationships, being honest, being trustworthy. I mean, that's how you really build those relationships through experiences,
Mhm.
and some of the best ones come in the most challenging of environments. And I think that's where people show their true colors, but at the same time, that's where the best bonds are built.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, the one phone call away. I might be two at this point, but I'm working on getting to one, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about working in the industry?
You know, I think about this often. I think it's twofold. One is that it's been inefficient for a very, very long time. And I know that we'll probably talk about some technology here in a little bit, but I think that people say, hey, this is the way that it's been done. It's too hard to move general contractors and designers and clients and trade partners off center. It's a lot of different pieces that need to come together. And to move the industry, it's too hard to get everyone aligned. I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions, and one that, quite frankly, we're really working to change.
Yeah.
I think another one is that you always need to go to the top. I think that one of the things I've learned in my career is building relationships at your level. So if you're a project manager, don't feel like you need to talk to the CEO and that's the only person that you should be trying to build a relationship, because specifically when you're younger in your career, those people are going to move up and going to be your peers. So making sure that you're building a true web of relationships at all levels, but specifically at your peer level. And the last one I would say is that, uh, and I don't know if this is a misconception, maybe it's just something that I hold dear, is you need to treat everyone with respect on the job site. I mentioned
Mm,
earlier, the person that's keeping the job site clean versus the person that's cutting the $1 billion check all have a very important piece of the puzzle that makes a project successful and makes our
that's right.
industry successful. And I think all too often, people can think about sticking their nose up at different positions and different, I'd say just, different levels within our industry, but everyone plays an instrumental piece.
That's right. Do you think that so that's not just, like that's very personal to you, it seems like,
Yeah.
and would you say that that has contributed to your success, like keeping that in mind constantly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that, I still walk job sites today and, try to find where the break area is or ask somebody what they're doing. I think that, you know, learning and respecting people that are, putting the work in place, understanding what could make them more efficient, what makes them happier on the job site. I mean, it shows that you care, not just because you want to appear that you care, but if you're going to be successful in this industry, you need to understand it. You need to respect all aspects of it because, one small piece that doesn't go well can derail an entire project. Our
Yeah.
schedules are more compressed than ever. Budgets are tighter with, inflation and cost of labor and supply chain, that if you don't have those relationships and you don't treat people with respect, there's a better chance that it doesn't go well.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of pressure. And you've been in some very almost political roles, right? I mean, in the projects that you work on, how do you manage the pressure?
No, it's a good question.
I know
You
it
know,
wasn't on the list,
yeah,
but
it wasn't on the list.
sorry.
No, so I mean, I think, look, everyone deals with it differently. I think that the biggest thing is to take a moment and understand and prioritize and reprioritize, meet your commitments. Also realize that you're not perfect, just like the people around you.
Mm,
I am kind of an oddity. I wake up every morning at 3:45 or 4 o'clock in the morning and work out, and that's where I think, that's where I, relieve stress and anxiety and can kind of formulate through the day. But usually by 9 a.m., my plan is, at least halfway out the window.
sure.
I think that it really comes down to surrounding yourself with really good and talented people and making sure that, just like I've had and continue to have great opportunities, you give them great opportunities. And sometimes that means letting people have enough leash to be able to make a mistake and figure out how to write it and see how they react to it.
Yeah,
And then I think that a lot of people see asking for help or bringing a team in is a sign of weakness. And I think that you don't need to bring 100 people to a one person problem, but
sure.
bringing in the right folks at the right time, keeping people informed,
Yeah.
all of those things can really chip away at any, stress that you do have because you know that there's other folks that have your back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think about that question a lot too, as coming from being a solopreneur into now leading a team, and how, I get to start from scratch with that, and like what kind of leader I want to be, and thinking a lot about that, and surrounding yourself with really talented people and not feeling like I have to know every answer to every question, right? I think has been really helpful. And then kind of just the constant communication when something's going awry, you have to be just kind of constantly, and not just communicating but also thinking about, how are they perceiving this, and in what ways can I assist them in making sure that they're, brought up to
Yeah.
kind of the level that we need to be performing at, right? So I think
Yeah,
about that a
absolutely.
lot too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you're 20. We talked about, you're 20 or you're 18. Like, what advice does wise Brett
Yeah.
give to young Brett?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, specifically in our industry, and there's a fine balance, right? I mean, new technologies, tools, AI is coming into the mix, but I would say, and I did this for the most part, I think I would double down on it, is really learning from the experienced people on the job site, understanding that what makes the foreman more or less efficient for the steel contractor, the electrician, the mechanical contractor, you name it. Spending time out in the field, I think all too often, because of the technology we have, it can give somebody a shield of not wanting to go out in the field and actually see the awesome
Mm,
tangible aspect of what we get to do in our business. It kind of goes back to what I said, and I don't want to repeat myself, but taking risks. Risk can mean a lot of different things. Risk can mean moving across the country on a whim from an opportunity that came up, or it can be, going after a project or a pursuit that you don't necessarily have a whole lot of business going after. I mean, I went to Seattle with zero projects, zero people on my team, and I'd like to think that that team is still doing awesome things even while I'm not there. But I think that as long as you're willing to work hard and put the time in and ask people's opinion of the strategy, not feel like you need to hold that close to your vest, I think that
Hmm.
that's going to make you amazingly successful.
Hmm.
And knowing you're going to make mistakes, it's going to happen. It
Yeah.
happens to all of us.
So it feels like you feel like no regrets, kind of. Would you
Absolutely not.
say?
Yeah, absolutely not. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, on both the personal and professional side, look, if you would have told me when I was 20 in college in central Pennsylvania that I would have been in the construction industry in the first place, let alone been a leader in construction in DC, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy. So I think that I've made amazing friends both inside and outside of the industry. My wife had my kids in Seattle. Those things wouldn't have happened if I professionally wouldn't have said yes.
Yeah.
Would I have treated a situation here and there differently? Yes, but I think that those experiences have formed my leadership style and my work ethic to what they are today. That without those challenging times, I likely wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
The
So
last
what do
thing I would
you?
say, the last thing I'd say on that is
Sure.
it's always hard. I mean, people talk about mentorship.
Mm.
Sometimes mentorship is or can be or feel forced. I think that throughout a 22-year career, I've had the fortune of having awesome partners and awesome mentors that really came organically, both inside and outside of the industry. I probably I didn't force it, and when it happened naturally, it's long lasting. There's people that I still count on today for advice, both personally and professionally, that, you know, I hold very dear to me.
So how would you advise someone who's looking to find that sort of organic mentor?
Yeah, I think that two things. One is a mentor doesn't mean it's somebody that you absolutely want to emulate. I've got from all of my different mentors, I've taken things that I absolutely adore about them and I want to do, and I take things from those same exact people that I don't want to do or I don't want to be. So I think that when people think mentor mentee, they usually think one. I've been lucky enough to have a handful and still do have a handful.
Yeah.
I think by not forcing it, by not realizing or by, excuse me, realizing that person isn't perfect and taking
Hmm.
aspects of it.
That's
And I
right.
think somebody that also, I can be honest with and can be honest with me, even when it needs to be tough love.
Yeah.
I always tell people I do better getting punched in the nose than I do patted on the back.
Mm.
But that's not everybody. So I think you need to find someone that provides the value you need at the times you need it most. And that's easier said than done.
Yeah, but I think your perspective is what's allowed for you to have these mentors, right? And you're saying that they're both inside and outside the industry. And so I think a lot of times when we think of finding mentorship, we think that person like has to have had the same career path that we want, or that, they're a leader within the industry. And when really, that doesn't have to be the case. They can be from any industry. And even sometimes I think it's more meaningful to find those people who are outside the industry, because then they can just hear kind of what you're going through and provide perspective that isn't so industry specific, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I mean, the business web of networks is very tight, let alone our niche, our
Right.
industry.
Right.
And I think that it gives different perspectives. When I think of myself as a leader or our company, I don't think of trying to be a good leader within, excuse me, the construction industry. Yes, I do want to be that. Yes, I want us to be the best construction company, but quite frankly, I want to be an amazing leader in general. I want us to be the best or one of the best companies in general. So by having those different experiences, now not everything's going to equate. I mean, a lot of my friends are in sales or technology or finance, and they're like, wow, you have a ridiculously high risk, low reward from a percentage fee perspective. Like, what are you doing? Because that's real about our industry.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but those same folks, when it comes to managing people, when it comes to understanding political landscapes, when it comes to just how do you work through work life balance and organization, those things transcend any single industry. It's just somebody that you can be vulnerable to and that you can both give and get solid feedback from.
So important. And the relationship piece is just, it really is key. Tell us about Suffolk. What do you love about it?
So Suffolk, for those of you, I know Mandy, you do, that don't know, John Fish started the company in 1982. It is a single shareholder company. So John started and owns 100% of the company. And John is a person who puts money back into the industry, into the
Yeah.
company. He wants to leave both the company and the industry better than he found it, which is amazing. And it's in a way that we are advancing the use of technology,
Yeah.
both by investing in companies as well as utilization, piloting new, creating our own technology to really move the needle on where our industry is, one that's been amazingly inefficient for decades, centuries, arguably.
Yeah.
And it's a place where innovation isn't just a word or a tagline. It's something that we value amazingly. It's something where, you know, our region, so we're obviously we're headquartered in Boston. We've got offices throughout New England, New York, DC, 4 in Florida, Dallas, Las Vegas, and 3 in California.
Okay.
And our vision is redefining how America builds. And when we talk about how America builds, we think of integrating the entire building lifecycle into a seamless platform. And seamless platform is, to say it differently, it's the life cycle of the project and how we tie them all together from
Mm,
business development, pre-construction, estimating, design, operations, sustainability, commissioning, the full life cycle, and how we can not just focus on our piece of it, but
yeah.
how through our Suffolk technology, how we use our investments, how we use our partnerships to look at the full lifespan. Because it's great if we can somehow reduce our cost, but if the design is inefficient or the utilization of the building doesn't hit from a commissioning perspective or sustainability perspective, it doesn't meet the overall goals, then it wasn't a success. So we
Mhm.
are really focused on redefining that entire life cycle and how America builds.
That's a big vision, but one that's so necessary.
Yeah.
It's needed,
Yeah.
right?
What I mean, I think companies across the world, not just construction, have a ton of data. What we've done over the past, give or take decade is very systematically putting tools in what we'd like to call our tech toolbox together that everyone uses. So all of the data is clean. We have a clean data lake. We have 50 folks that sit in a room we call mission control, think like NASA in Houston, that is just looking at all of that data so that we have better predictive analytics. And those 50 data analysts, there's no other construction company that I'm aware of that has that, so that we have data that we can use both for dashboards to ensure that we can use that data both for the existing projects and for new projects, but also to ensure that we can be completely transparent to all of our partners, trade partners, design partners, and clients. So everyone knows every 7 minutes where every project is across the entire country. And
Amazing.
I think a lot of people talk about technology, they talk about data, they talk about transparency, and it's not for a lack of like wanting to do it. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of investment. And I know that Suffolk is likely the only, or certainly one of the few folks that actually does that. And that was the reason why I came over, and the reason why I love what we do, because we've got new tools and processes that are being piloted, SOPs to make sure everyone's doing the same thing the same way, so
Yeah.
that whether it's a aviation job in San Francisco or a mission critical project in South Bend, Indiana, they're all doing the same thing so that we have that clean data.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been really interesting over the last couple of years as AI has kind of risen to the top of conversations. We did a panel for NAOP last year on AI, and I think the thing is, the way you're describing it is literally what is needed to take all these disparate parts of the project and add technology so that it's one seamless like experience for the client, right? Like that's what you're describing. But I feel like most of the industry still doesn't really understand how AI is going to change. So I'm blown away by what you're saying and so excited by it. Like,
But I mean, if you think about like just the framework, and look, I'm not an AI whiz by any stretch of the imagination. We've got Jit Key, who's our chief information, chief technology officer, Suffolk Tech, our folks in mission control that know how the ones and zeros really work. But what
Hmm.
I do know is that if you don't have consistent data being utilized and being captured across all the projects,
Yeah,
there's no way for AI to actually give you a
that's right.
real predictive simulation if you don't have it stored in the same way. You have everyone doing the same clicks the same way. Yes, the product type is different, but that data, whether it's safety, whether it's schedule, whether it's cost, those things can't be really used by AI if you don't have similar data to be able
Yes.
to derive a model.
Right, right, exactly. And
But when
yeah,
you have 3,000 people, I mean, it takes a cultural shift, and it takes structure, it takes process, and it takes buy-in. We often say we've got a cult-like culture because you need to buy into that. You can't be
yeah.
a cowboy or cowgirl and say, hey, this is where I did it before and this is how I do it. It's not because we're trying to put someone in a box, but we're all better by doing something the same way. And we have hundreds and thousands of new things in a pipeline from a technology. And if anybody has an idea, we vet it, we pilot it, and maybe it goes into an optional piece of technology, or it goes into something that goes into our tech toolbox.
Hmm.
So it's far from stifling, but it is consistent, and consistency is key when it comes to AI from a data perspective.
Yes. And I think the next level of AI is going to be training it how to take the disparate data and making something useful out of it. So I think that like just as an AI industry, like that's where we're headed. And part of how Idifico intends to bring something meaningful to end users. Yeah, I mean, and I agree, like the buy-in is so important from your employee perspective, and bringing it in that way is going to be so meaningful. And every 7 minutes is, I mean, that's legit, you know?
You
Yeah.
can walk down here to our mission control, which legitimately looks like a mini NASA headquarters,
Yeah, I love it.
and you see all of the data from all of the projects. We've got operations project management in each region that is, when there is a tripwire that's tripped, or a red flag that goes up, that we're trying to understand, is it the data or is there something wrong in the project?
Mm,
Things like our industry, things happen, things go wrong, and it's more about making sure that we have the consistency. And one of the biggest things for buy-in is that you can't weaponize that data. You can't slap someone's hand if something goes wrong. It's meant there to show that something's wrong, and we figure out how to fix it. That we have two very specific policies. We've got a no fault culture, which means if you make a mistake, you probably already feel bad. You don't need someone to rub your nose in it. And if you do that, then people are probably going to try to fudge the information or
that's
not
right.
put something in.
Yeah.
And the other is a no jerk policy, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So this might be a little too out there, but I'm curious. So if I'm a PM who works for Suffolk, how is my like day-to-day different than if I work for, I mean, pretty much any other GC?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think that what you'll find just at a job site, our job sites, I believe, look different from a professional perspective, whether it's the scrim, it's the uniforms, it's a very professional environment. From a data perspective, we use Procore. A lot of folks use Procore. I think one of the biggest things is we really want our folks to be piloting new technologies that are coming through either our Boost program or Suffolk Tech, or
Hmm.
through our operational excellence, OpsX. So I think that you might see different tools and technologies that you're feeding information back as to whether it can make its way into the tech toolbox. The keystrokes into Procore might feel the same, but the data is being used very differently. And I do think that by using things, and you and I talked about this in the past, that are a part of that tech bundle, like trunk tools,
Hmm.
like Kaya AI, that is helping you real time with lead times that go directly into the P6 schedule. Kind of like if a lead time is updated, it automatically updates your P6 schedule, kind of like Waze updates whenever there's a traffic jam ahead of you. The predictive analytics at your fingertips
Hmm.
actually makes it that much more efficient for your day to day. Now I'm dating myself, but there are things that we did back in the early 2000s, stamping drawings and how to find product information, that the tools like trunk tools and plenty of the other things that have come through the Boost program that just make the day-to-day life that much easier.
Hmm.
I think that efficiency gives us the opportunity to continue to promote within, and not just from a career path perspective, it is that, but also how people are learning and people are thinking about how we can continuously improve.
Mm.
Because if you're at a job site and you have a really good idea, or things are really inefficient and you came up with an idea and it gets shot down, it stifles the growth of the company. It stifles your desire to think outside of the box. And those
That's
are
right.
things that I think truly differentiate us.
Yeah, and that really is key for, for holding on to your talent too, right?
Absolutely.
you know and work life balance is something that historically has not existed in construction. Do you think that we're through the technology, we're headed in a direction where that might actually be a reality for people?
Yeah, I mean, look, every human is different, right? So,
That's
like,
right.
one
Yeah, because
person's
I'm
definition of
not getting up at
work-life balance.
3:45 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, but I do that so that, I have, you know this, I have two young girls.
Right.
I
Totally.
work out in the morning so that when I get home, and I get home at a decent time, unless I'm traveling, I want to be able to have dinner with them and have a conversation with my wife.
Right.
And working out in the evening just isn't in the cards. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing about work-life balance is communication. You might have some folks that need to drop somebody off in the morning and they decide to work later.
Yeah.
You have someone that's, getting ready to go on vacation, and you communicate what needs to be done so you're not worrying about it when you're on vacation. At the end of the day, it comes to two things: communication and trust. You trust that what you're telling someone is going to get done so you don't need to worry about it. And you trust that people, or you believe that people trust you, that you are doing all of the things in your power to resolve something,
Yeah.
organize something, or lead something. To answer your question more pointedly, I think that technology is driving efficiency. I think that we are in a spot where, because of schedule compression and cost, there's always going to be pressure. And it
Hmm.
goes back to, how do we use the tools to be more efficient
Yeah.
and continue to communicate and build trust within our teams so that people have work-life balance.
Is there a goal for the company to be viewed as more of a data company than a, a traditional GC?
I think that we want to be viewed as the most technologically advanced contractor. We are a contractor, Suffolk Construction. Now, we have Suffolk, which I'm a part of the executive team that is Suffolk. So we work within Suffolk Design. So we have our own design studio. We have Suffolk Tech, which also has the Boost program, which is the largest construction tech VC. Closed a $125 million fund year before last. We're in the middle of a $200+ million fund right now.
Mm.
We've got Suffolk Sustainability, which also holds our commissioning group. We've got Liberty, which is our self-perform group. So I think of us as the most technologically forward company as it
Mhm.
pertains to construction. And as I mentioned earlier, we want to be the best company, not just the best construction company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was thinking, that this is not the only like place you want to play, when you're thinking about kind of the bigger picture. So, okay. So, one of the questions: what's an example of a technological process you've seen implemented in the last 5 years that's had a really meaningful impact?
So I'm going to give you a few, if that's all right.
Yeah. I
So,
love it.
so I think So two that were generated in-house and two of them that came through our Boost program.
Okay.
So and this is, it goes back to, if there's not something that's out there, I mean, we have the desire, the passion, and are given the time and money to be able to do that. So from an estimating perspective, there wasn't an estimating software that was out there that met all of our needs and collected the data in a way that we could then use it in the way that we thought was most useful. So, um, our lead pre-construction and estimating, a gentleman, Scott Menard, as well as a team around him, both from a coding perspective as well as estimating perspective, came up with a product called Edify, which is now used by other general contractors.
Hmm.
That gives us the ability, from a conceptual and real-time estimating, feeds into our schedules, feeds into our design, where we're able to do 3D, 4D, 5D models based off of that estimating software. And that was a differentiator on day one. I was learning how to use Edify, and I was like, blown away. Everyone that comes in, regardless of the level, but I think some of the more senior folks that are coming in that are as experienced as I am, I'm not going to say old again,
Yeah. Right.
are blown away by it. And similarly, from a scheduling perspective, P6 is the standard software, but there was, from a lean concept, you use last planner, you use pull planning, but there wasn't a system that was, from a technological perspective, a way to synthesize the information, capture the information, hold people accountable, and keep the data. And we came up with what was a short interval planning system called Edge that we have recently spun out and sold to Procore. But those are two things that were built in-house that shows just the innovative nature that I think both of those have moved the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mentioned trunk tools, and there are so many others, but I think trunk tools is one where it really makes it much more efficient to both look in our internal intranet for SOPs, to go through anything from product data sheets and submittals and RFIs. It's an amazingly efficient tool for folks out in the field, both from a project management and a superintendent perspective, to be able to have information at their fingertips through, in essence, a chatbot that uses AI to synthesize the information that you've got on your projects and throughout your company.
That's so cool. I love it that you can just, and then it's
Yeah.
just
The
there.
the last one, and I mean, there's different types of this, and it's come along. I mean, different types of robotics. Rugged robotics is one that we use often.
Okay.
But
Uh-huh.
with the way that modeling is today, which is vastly different than it was 20 years ago, everything's modeled already. So having a robot that, a the the tangible side of it, or excuse me, the tangent side of it is for rugged robotics to put layout on the ground and lay out walls and curtain wall systems and MEP and door frames and you name it. You need to have a clean floor, which means you've
Mm,
got a safe environment.
sure.
You have everything off the ground, so on lifts or in a just-in-time fashion. So you've got kind of the side effect of needing to have that environment, and then to not have errors of where lines are snapped or losing production. You can set the system up, it can run at night, you're back the next day and you're putting up studs or you're hanging curtain wall off of dimensions that were done by a robot that's based on the model, which has been checked and verified and confirmed, and it's a very clean and efficient process.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What would you solve? What problem would you use technology? What would you create?
I think that, and we're working on this. I mean, it's got a little ways to go, and I'll preface by it's not taking away any of the like artistic ability from designers, but really figuring out how we can check design
Mm,
using AI to look at lighting plans, egress paths, ADA. So you're not, I mean, if you think about it, if you've got a model and the model's correct, and then that goes to a robot that lays something out in the correct fashion that was checked by AI before it got laid out by that robot, you shouldn't have a bust in a bathroom that needs to have a certain radius for ADA accessibility or confirmation of paths for egress, for fire egress. Those things are being checked and confirmed by AI through design and then laid out by a robot that's going directly from that model. So I
yeah.
think how we continue to do that for things that are, for lack of better terms, the less desirable side of design,
Right.
the
Right. Totally.
details, the rechecking egress or rechecking an ADA or a door swing or something like that, so we can resolve more conflicts before they appear, and preferably to eliminate conflicts before they appear out in the field.
Yeah. So is the tool gonna know which jurisdiction you're in and like get that granular, or is it more kind of just a general, like, a for example, right? Like that's gonna vary depending on the jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it starts with the national
Sure.
requirements of, hey, fire egress needs to be this. And then as you layer in, for a code at a specific airport in a specific city, they may have different requirements. They're more
Right.
stringent.
Right.
And once again, I'm not the tech wizard, but
Sure.
it's not hard to put those parameters within the AI model to ensure that it does the first pass very quickly, that does the second pass with the local jurisdiction, and you still get that in a exponentially faster fashion than you would by having somebody look at it. It's an architect in San Francisco that's working on a project in St. Louis that needs to look up a code and then verify, and then something happens and the design team switches out people and like, oh, did
Hmm.
Bob or Sally check that
Right.
or not? Should we recheck it? It's all there, and it helps from a continuity perspective as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone on the job site stays there for the duration. More often than not, that's not the case for all sorts of reasons. But I think that it helps in that continuity perspective and checks and balances.
Oh my gosh, it makes me so excited. I mean, I live and breathe tech and AI, right? And so hearing from you that this is actually happening is, I feel like my heart's singing. So, do you think that overall the industry still deserves this, kind of we live in the arcane ages, or do you think that we're all coming along? You guys are obviously leading here, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, not to sound overly dramatic, but I think we have to.
Mm,
And I think that someone needs to take the lead, and we're excited to do that with amazing partners. We don't do it by ourselves. But if not, then buildings won't get built by folks that are passionate about building.
mm,
It will become a commodity more so than it already is in some marketplaces. The cost of labor, the aging workforce, the cost of money with interest rates the way they are right now, all politics aside, things like tariffs and supply chain, it's too expensive. A building that is built today costs more to build than it's worth the day that it's being used.
yeah,
And that's just not a viable business model.
right,
So if we, the
right.
folks that are passionate about building, can't figure it out, someone else will, or it'll slow down so drastically that it becomes prohibitive to be in the industry. So it's something that I don't think of, you know, do we have the liberty to do or not do? I think we have to.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. And it is, I mean, like you said, not to be dramatic, but it is kind of that dramatic at this point, you know? Yeah, let's not die, please. Okay, so in your role, you oversee multiple sectors. How does your approach to BD differ within each of the sectors? Super curious about this.
Yeah, and I mentioned before, I'm surrounded by amazing folks that lead those sectors.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, so I mean, it's a lot different dealing with a private client that is super relationship driven, and you need to have obviously the experience versus a public client that whether it's federal, local, regardless, that may have different requirements. Two things that never go out of style are hard work and relationships. People want to know from a client perspective that you understand what their end goal is, whether it's their end goal or their client's end goal,
Yeah,
and that you're going to be there, you're going to be fair, and you're going to provide certainty to get them where they need to be. And I think it takes a lot of hard work. So relationships and hard work, I mean, it takes time to understand those things, to ask the right questions, to do
that's
the
right.
homework, to know what is important to that airport. Is it cost? Is it schedule? Is it safety? It's all those things. It always is.
Hmm.
Sometimes different things, safety is always top. Cost versus schedule versus your experience versus your team's experience versus your company resume. Each client's going to be a little bit different. I think taking the time to understand what's meaningful to them is still going to be the biggest proponent of success.
Yeah. So listening well is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people go into to sell, and I mean, I'm not giving away any trade secrets, and they're selling. They're selling so hard that they forget to listen and understand. And you know, you can ask the question, but if you already have the answer in the back of your mind, then are you really listening?
That's right.
And I think that what we try to do is make sure that we understand, truly listen, truly understand,
Yeah.
and put together a thoughtful proposal, ask more thoughtful questions based on the answers we had previously gotten
Yeah.
to be able to win the job. But it doesn't stop there. It's to then execute that and make sure that that vision is upheld throughout the project and throughout the turnover and hopefully to the next opportunity. I mean, it's, we always say that the best business development is done by our operational folks who are on
Mm,
the project
that's
that are
right.
making those visions come through. And, the best thing you can ever have is, that client asking by name for that
Hmm.
superintendent, that project manager, that safety person, that estimating person. That's the best business development you could ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some general differences between pursuing a public project versus a private project?
I mean, just candidly, some public projects, specifically in the federal realm, can feel a little more box checking, sterile, whatever word you want to use. I don't
Mm,
think that you change your aspect of how you dig up information, how you try to find out. It might not be as easy to find out,
Sure. Right. That's
What is
true.
valued by them, because
Yeah.
it's either not their nature or they're not allowed to tell you. So I think it can be more challenging in a public environment to truly ask questions and even have the chance to listen,
Yeah.
whereas a entity is usually more forthcoming, is more open to relationships. And I'm not talking about, you know, going to a Celtics game or, a Seahawks game or something like that. I think all too often business development gets the misconception that it's, schmoozing versus listening.
Yeah.
You can do that in different environments and to each their own. But I think that in private development, there's also an opportunity to break in, where people that are new to the team, that have the experience, that wore a different hard hat but still have the experience, get a better chance. Whereas some institutions or public clients really look at what they've done at that firm, which can be a barrier to entry that
Hmm.
people just need to figure out a way to overcome. That doesn't hold us
Right.
back. It's just something to acknowledge and work through.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that about like listening is mostly going to be better than going to a game. I mean, as someone who briefly worked for a general contractor and I went to a hockey game at one point and like, with someone that we were pursuing and I don't know hockey at all. I don't know anything about it. And also I don't care about it. And so like trying to like fake that I'm watching the game, but also really trying to listen and be thoughtful about the questions I'm asking so we can win the work was, like, so
When
I
that
would,
person might just want to be at the game.
right. Yeah. And I mean, we enjoyed ourselves, we both left feeling good about it. But yeah, I just appreciate a different venue for listening than, watching a puck. Anyway, so okay, when you're competing for a high profile project, what do you think makes the biggest difference? Experience, relationship, pricing, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar answer to the prior question. I mean,
Yeah,
it's always all of them.
yeah,
And for
right.
different clients and different projects, it's which one is more prioritized to them. If it is a client that is super schedule constrained, excuse me, pricing is going to need to make sense. They still have a pro forma that needs to work out, but
Hmm.
they are probably more focused on, have you done it before? Are you actually giving the team that has done it before? And do I have a relationship with you that I trust you're not going to change out that team, or that if we hit a bump in the road, you're going to have a mutual understanding of how we're going to work through it together versus being pit against one another. So I think that it really depends. On a high profile project, I would say relationship and experience probably would outweigh price. Safety is always up there because everyone needs to go home the same way they came to a job site.
Yeah,
But I think that, I mean, that's table stakes, but it's very, very real and very, very important.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that if everything else is equal or within, from a cost perspective, a percentage or two, um, that it then you get to, okay, most contractors you'll get shortlisted to two or three.
Hmm.
That's when it really comes down to the relationship and who they trust. And it's hard to have trust without having a relationship.
That's right.
Almost like nearly impossible.
It is. Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I perfectly
Yeah.
answered your question.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, I mean, they are, I think what you're saying is that they're equally important. And so you can't like just abandon one for the sake of the other. It has to constantly be this, like weighing game.
Yeah, and I mean, the
It's
only way
one.
that you know that is by what we talked about before, is listening, not assuming that
That's right.
price is the most important thing, or that because you went to a hockey game, you got a great relationship. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, all the time, it's a group tackle. I mean, there are different folks that you want to hear it, so you heard the same way. You don't assume that one person is going to make all the calls from a selection committee perspective, that you're talking to all of the different people that are interested in selecting your team.
Hmm.
It's dynamic, but I think that the only way you can get there is by listening and building that relationship.
Yeah, that's so important when I think about it just from like people sitting at the table perspective, like making sure that every voice is heard is part of the job, right? I mean, which kind of leads me into I'm curious, DEI is a hot topic. It's something that obviously I hold dear, is really important to me. And what I'm seeing out there is that it's very important to a lot of people. And so while it's maybe no longer going to be mandatory, it's something that people are still, it's just like their own personal core value. So they're still moving forward with making sure that that all boats are rising. But I'm just curious what your perspective is around this.
I mean, I think that the industry needs the best and brightest people, like we said before. Our industry can't survive if it continues to be as inefficient as we are now. I think that it's also a small, tight knit community that needs to come together to have all boats rise so that we can make sure that all voices are heard to figure out how we can better our industry. And as we look at different projects in different places, there's so many opportunities for people to add value that regardless of all other things and all politics aside, we need to, as an industry, find a way to make sure that everyone that has an idea has a voice, and not just a voice, but a prominent one. And I think that the incubator space that we've got in Boost is a perfect example of that. I mean, you look at the different companies that I keep coming back to trunk tools, but people that have those types of ideas, maybe it's a drywall contractor, maybe it's a tech startup. In my mind, it's about betterment of our industry, and it comes in all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah, that means a lot. Okay, let's see. What's the most challenging pursuit you've been involved in, and what did you take away from the experience?
I looked at the question a couple times. I'm giving away that you gave me some questions ahead of time. It's really hard. Like each pursuit, like you drive so much passion into,
Yeah.
and you kind of I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know this about me. Um, I think that the ones you lose, you take a lot away from because you question what you could
Mhm.
have done differently.
Right.
I think that each pursuit has challenges. I think of when I came into Seattle, no one really knew who the company that I worked for was. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. And I think that the most challenging is when you're going into a new geography, a new market sector, and you're trying to win your first one.
Hmm. Hmm.
You've got such an uphill battle. But if you surround yourself by great folks, you do the hard work, you work to build relationships, meaningful relationships, not just level one relationships, where you're talking about, the news and the sports and the weather. That's when it comes to fruition. But the toughest ones are where you're really trying to break in. You've committed to yourself. You've likely committed to your company, whether the company's owned by you, Mandy, or it's owned by a larger entity like a Suffolk. Um, you're putting yourself, your personal credentials out there, and
Yeah.
you know that the chances of a likely win is very small, but you put your heart and soul into it and you still fall short because you kind of knew it was going to happen.
Mm.
That was probably the toughest. But I think you also learn from it. You get the
Yeah.
debrief, you understand what you could have done better. Hopefully, you turn some heads, and the next opportunity or the third opportunity is where you land one. And that persistence, that hard
That's
work,
right.
that drive, the relationships you built to get there, showing you weren't gonna back down. I think that's what really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so huge. And it's a really vulnerable spot to be. Like when you know what you do really well and then you move into that different market, it does feel really vulnerable when you're like the new person, you're the new
Yeah.
one on the block or whatever. But
Well, I mean, you know Gary. I mean, Gary and I, we're together for a long, long time, and still stay in touch with Gary. He's retired now, which is awesome. But I
yeah,
mean, we were beating the pavement for the better part of 18 months before we had a single win.
yeah,
And so to answer your question, I don't know that it would be any single, but I'd say that the toughest was breaking into Seattle, which was a very provincial, parochial market.
yes,
Great designers, great contractors, great developers, great institutions, but tough to break into. And I think that, you know, 3 dozen projects that we pursued and lost, and most of which we didn't even get shortlisted, was humbling. But I think that the grit and hard work that we had to then end up. And when I left, it was, had a great executive team that's still doing great. We had over 125 people. And to think back of those days that we were beating the pavement and rolling up our sleeves, and back to my analogy earlier, getting punched in the nose on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that in for the world.
Yeah. You built a company. You like built a company within a company,
Well,
basically.
there were a lot of us that were doing it. It was
Yeah.
a lot of people that made that happen, but it was an experience that I think has shaped me personally and professionally that like I said, I would do again in a heartbeat
Yeah.
at that age.
That's right. That's right. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, you're in a good spot now. But, it's a lot of hard work you're putting in still. So that's awesome. Okay, final question. I didn't put on the list, but so in 15 years when you look back, what will be the project you're most proud of?
I don't. This is not meant to be cliche. It won't be a project. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
great to have projects, and the best thing about our industry, two best things, are the people and the fact that there's tangible. I'm hoping at that point in time, not too many of the buildings I was a part of are being torn down.
Right.
But it's the people. I mean, 15 years from now, I truly believe that life's about experiences, personally and professionally, and those experiences happen with people. They don't happen with, steel and concrete and drywall. I've had the opportunity to work with and around just amazing folks. And I think that in 15 years, having the ability to continue to build great leaders that are going to take the industry further than I can and will in 15 years, that's what I'll be most proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep, it is about the people. Yeah. And I think even though this industry, needs to kind of get up with the times, there's also a piece of it that, the relationships are still a big deal, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's awesome to have healthcare facilities that people are having their children at and skyscrapers that you can point to. I mean, that
Yeah.
is an awesome thing about our industry. But the stories of when you were, you know, doing the punch list at 11 p.m. to get TCO that morning, and
Right.
you brought in pizza, and then you look back at the stories and the people you learn from, and the the people that I talked to a person earlier today, and we were talking about what it was like 15 years ago, and now we're talking about what our kids are doing, and like it's those memories that I think will transcend any physical, tangible building that is a part of the portfolio that I've had the great honor of just being a part of.
Yeah. I think kind of what you're describing is friendship. And I think that, yeah, and when you work this much, it's a lot of fun when you get to work with friends.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife will attest. I spend a lot of time with my work friends and family, and it's been that way my entire life. And it's, people that are truly friends. When
Yeah.
I go to, the places where I've lived and worked in the past, sometimes I'm in and out, but more often than not, I'm catching up with somebody that I've worked with or I met as a personal friend because I moved to that location for work.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, thank you so much, Brett, for being here and sharing your perspectives with us. I hope we can have the conversation again sometime.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again on the new endeavor and all of your successes. All right, you too. Bye.